What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here today to make a video about an article. There's an article that I read. It's from a familiar writer. If you guys watch my show, watch my channel, whatever, there is an article, or excuse me, there's a writer that I tend to read articles from. It's a person that I don't generally agree with. I think he's kind of a fool. If I'm being honest, but again, I do like to be as objective and as fair as possible. Sometimes I do agree with some of the things that he has to say. It's Kyle Krabs from Dolphins Wire, just in case you were wondering. And, you know, but usually I don't. I think that a lot of the things that he has to say are ridiculous, but I like to give you guys a different perspective. He does oftentimes, though, have, statistics and some things thrown in there that's good pieces of additional information and context. So I like to make sure that you guys have the full picture of all scenarios, and so that's why I do even include sometimes people that I disagree with. So what does he have to say today? Well, it's regarding the draft, and some of this stuff is, some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with, but it's about the potential for another team to jump us in the draft positioning to get a quarterback. Now, it's obviously something we've talked about a little bit, but there are teams that are positioned to be able to do something like that, and teams that do actually need a quarterback. So here's what he had to say. Chargers, Panthers loom as biggest threats to Dolphins trade-up bid. Okay, looking at the 2020 NFL draft order, there's a few things we know. The Cincinnati Bengals are destined to take Joe Burrow, unless, of course, Burrow pulls a power play and creates an Eli Manning situation. Let's pause just real quick. I do think that it is most likely that the Cincinnati Bengals will take Joe Burrow. But, as I've said before, it's not out of the realm of possibility now that the Dolphins trade away some massive haul of picks to the Bengals to move up to that number one spot. Okay. Now, I personally think that's going to be, at least I hope that that's going to be too big of a price for them. I know that there have been reports that Stephen Ross is, in love with Joe Burrow. I know that he wants a quarterback and he's craven and desperate and will do anything to get one. Whoever it is that he loves, etc., etc. But I think that, the price is probably going to be too high, or at least I hope it's going to be too high for them. I think that they also do really love Tua and possibly Justin Herbert. And I think the more likely scenario is that they'll end up trading to the number 3 spot with the Detroit Lions to help ensure that another team doesn't jump them to the number 3 spot and get, a quarterback. Because then Stephen Ross would probably lose his fucking mind if Joe Burrow went number 1 and then another team jumps us to number 3 overall to get Tua Tagovailoa. Now, look, there is a distinct possibility. These other teams don't have as much draft capital as we do, and we'll get to that part of his article in a minute, but that's an area where I kind of disagree on. It's a fact that we have more draft capital, but it's not a fact that they wouldn't be able to do it. But these are teams that are going to be driving up the price, and what could end up causing the Dolphins to trade away more draft capital than what they should theoretically, at least based off of the draft pick value chart, let's say, right? They might end up giving more because somebody, one or maybe two of these teams are running up the price, right? So let's go. Another thing we know. So we don't know 100% that the Bengals are going to take Joe Burrow. I think it's highly likely, but there is always that possibility that something happens. The Bengals aren't the only team in the top 10 that's hungry for a quarterback, not by a long shot. But if you'd like a silver lining, the Dolphins are already ahead of their primary competition, and they've got negotiating power. So he's right and wrong there. He's right that we do have more draft capital, but that doesn't necessarily give us negotiating power. It does a little bit, because what it does do is it helps to ensure that we can outbid anybody, right? That's not negotiating power, right? That's just having more resources than everybody else, right? Because what'll happen is okay, so I mean, it's obviously negotiating power with like the Lions, right? But the other teams have power, right? The two teams, the Panthers and the Chargers, are the two teams right behind us, 6 and 7, that both need quarterbacks, right? And so they might have 7 or 8 picks, whereas we have 14. But that doesn't mean that those 7 or 8 picks aren't going to be substantial enough to be able to go up to 3 spots, right? Because the number 5th overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, is 1,700 points on the scale. The number 6 pick is like 1,500 or something like that. It's not that big of a difference. So they wouldn't have to give away too much more to equal the value of the number 3 pick, which is 2,200 points, right? They wouldn't have to give up much more than what we would at number 5. But then if they drive up the price, right? Let's say the Chargers at number 6, right, offer whatever point value it is to get to 2,200, right? And that's what the Dolphins have already offered, right? Because they're not trying to, break the bank. So let's say the Dolphins offer them the, equivalent in point value worth of picks. So 2,200 points worth of picks. And then, let's say they do like, 2150, right? But then the Chargers come in with like, 2250, right? A little over. Well, that could drive, maybe that's worth it to them if they really want to go get a quarterback. We already know that they're going to let Phillip Rivers go and test free agency, right? And so, and they don't expect to bring him back. So it could be absolutely worth it for them, right? They could go up and get a guy, and that could drive. Anyway, so I think you guys get the point. Let's continue on. The Dolphins' 2 biggest threats to trading up to 3 appear at this point in time to be the Los Angeles Chargers and the Carolina Panthers. Now, but let's also note that, the Redskins, if they were so inclined, they could take a quarterback. Shit, the fucking Lions could take a quarterback if they really were so inclined. Yes, they have Matthew Stafford, but he is starting to get, a little bit up there in age. And I mean, the Lions haven't done very well the past few years with Matt Patricia and, Matthew Stafford over the past few years. Things haven't exactly gone well. So you never know. They could. So those are also potentials. I think they're probably much smaller, but those are also potentials going forward. Both teams' longtime quarterbacks are either confirmed out, Los Angeles with Phillip Rivers, or teetering on the brink of divorce, Carolina with Cam Newton. The Chargers have already bid farewell to Rivers, who is set to hit the open market and free agency this offseason for the first time in his career. With the Chargers quarterback spot vacant and the team picking at 6, they're a team to be leery of, which ESPN's Jeff Darlington indicated earlier this week on ESPN's Get Up programming. And it's definitely a possibility. We've been talking about this for a while. There's absolutely distinct possibilities that other teams could vie for that spot and drive up the asking price. So even if the Dolphins don't give away the King's ransom to go up to the number 1 spot, they could give away a mini King's ransom to go up to the number 3 spot because there's, enough competition for it. And look, at the end of the day, maybe the Chargers and the Panthers, maybe they don't actually want to trade up, but they get in talks and start driving the price up, and maybe they get to that like 2250 mark and they're like, okay, if they do accept it, maybe we do like a guy, and maybe that's a price that we're worth, that is worth it to us. But the bright side, if we don't accept it, or if they don't accept it, or if, let's say, the Dolphins or somebody else then outbids them, then they could be like, okay, well, the bright side to not getting the quarterback after moving up is that we created this like flurry of action that might cause another player that we covet to drop to us, right? I know that seems a little complicated, but it's part of the whole smokescreen thing, right? So like a team like the Chargers, maybe they offer enough, maybe they offer that 2250 or maybe 2300 points, value worth of picks, for the number 3 spot, which is worth 2,200 points, right? And then maybe that's worth it to them if they can go up and get their guy. But then if they don't get it, then they create all this competition, and maybe that ends up allowing another player that they covet to drop to them at 6, right? So there's a lot that goes into all of this. But that's, again, part of the reason why I disagreed with this whole philosophy to begin with, because the whole philosophy is hindering on so many unknowns with so many things that could potentially go wrong, right? Like, and it's such a specific... It's such a specific and narrow-minded philosophy that there's just so much that can go wrong. And so, like, almost all of these different scenarios could, you know, potentially throw a serious cog into the wrenches for the Dolphins or cause them to do something extreme, etc., etc. The Chargers general manager Tom Telesco would have you believe otherwise. He recently stated on local sports radio that he liked the team's internal options at quarterback, referring to veteran Tyrod Taylor or 2019 fifth-round rookie Easton Stick. You should believe that for about a half a second. So again, right? I mean, I don't know anything about the rookie, right, that they just got, Easton Stick, but he was a rookie and he was playing behind Rivers and Tyrod Taylor, you know, but maybe, you know, whatever, maybe he could be the future for them, and Tyrod might be the perfect bridge quarterback, or maybe that's the veteran that they want to have to bring up the young guy, or maybe they're using, you know, or maybe it is a smoke screen, etc., etc. Who knows? We don't know. But there's a lot of things. Either way, though, if they wanted to move up to get a quarterback, that could potentially drive up the price for the Dolphins, would drive up the price for the Dolphins if they were seriously doing it, or if they were just doing it as a smokescreen, that still could drive up the price for the Dolphins and cause the Dolphins to give away more than what they should or what you would like, etc., blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, both Panthers GM Marty Herney and owner Dave Tepper are playing coy with how long veteran quarterback Cam Newton will be with the organization. By the way, I don't want either of those players to be the quarterback of the Dolphins. Just putting that out there. I don't like Phillip Rivers all that much. He's never been all that great to me. His nickname for me is Phillip Quivers, because I think he's a massive choke artist under pressure, and when you know, things are really big, and I think that's part of the reason why he's never gotten to the big game, as opposed to where Ryan Tannehill, I think he's not perfect, but I think he plays like a, you know, an all-around solid game and is really good at you know, throwing on the run, deep ball, etc. But he doesn't have the propensity to just start throwing picks all of a sudden like Phillip Rivers does. Anyway, and Cam Newton is an egotistical asshole that's fading away in time and talent in the NFL. So anyway, the team has undergone the beginnings of an ambitious rebuild, one that will unlikely see a 31-year-old quarterback with 2 consecutive season-ending injuries be a part of. Yeah, there's that too. He has been getting injured as of late as well. Tepper reiterated that the team is starting from the ground level and that his prize coaches want to develop talent. That typically indicates hand-selecting their own guys. Quote, with head coach Matt Rule and offensive coordinator Joe Brady, we got people who really develop talent. Okay, I don't want to really develop talent, okay? I don't want to give too much credit to anybody, but you can see what happened with quarterback Joe Burrow down there at LSU, said Tepper via Panthers.com. We have a little bit of a road to hoe. We have to figure out what we're doing with players and who is healthy or not healthy. We'll figure all that out. It's kind of exciting. We have something that makes sense to people. It's a little different than anybody else has. I think people should be excited about it. Now, those kinds of quotes do sound like they probably are likely to move on from him. Again, I don't want him or Phillip Rivers in Miami. Let them go somewhere else if somebody sees fit to sign them. I don't think that they are in any way, shape, or form going to be the answer for this team in the short term or long term. So there's that. But on the other side, though, those are 2 teams now that are right behind us, picking at 6 and 7. That could cause problems for the Dolphins going forward into this draft. Does that sound like the messaging of a man who plans to bring Cam Newton back into the fold as the face of the old guard in Carolina? Hardly. Expect the Panthers, who picked 7th, to be active. And I do agree with that part. But here's the problem for both teams relative to outbidding the Dolphins. Miami picks 5th, Los Angeles 6th, and Carolina 7th, and neither the Chargers or the Panthers own any additional draft selections in any round of the 2020 NFL Draft. The Dolphins, they're scheduled to own 14 picks. Well, again, we don't know that yet. They have 10 at the moment. We have to wait and see how the compensatory picks actually play out. Those should be listed soon, though. I believe next month in March. Let's see. Neither the Chargers or Panthers own extra picks in 2021 yet either. But technically neither do the Dolphins, because what he's referring to is the compensatory picks mostly. Now, we have extra picks because of the trades, but he's mostly referring to the compensatory picks. That's why he says the Chargers and Panthers don't have additional ones yet, right? Although he does say either there. But he did say the Dolphins a little bit more definitively. We don't know exactly yet. It is, the projections are that we'll end up having 14 picks overall. But we'll see what ends up happening. And there's also some question on whether or not, like, you know, where exactly they're going to land. Are we going to get like a 3rd for Cam Wake and Juwan James? Are we going to get a 4th, a 5th? Where's that shit going to land, right? The team already possesses 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. And those are obviously mostly from the trades, or those are from the trades. You can want and need a deal all day long, but until the Chargers or Panthers manufacture some extra draft picks, the ball is in Miami's court and they're running out of time. So, just to wrap this up, the reason why he's right and wrong there, he's factually correct that even if they do end up picking up a couple compensatory picks, we are likely to as well, and we should still have significant more draft capital than those teams. That is factual. Now, it's factual because that was the intention of the 2019 season. That's why we instituted the hallmark key points of tanking, and so we did. The 5 wins are irrelevant to that fact. We actually did tank, and part of that tank was accruing those draft picks, and so they positioned themselves by instituting that philosophy to set themselves up for a scenario in which not only would they be able to like trade, but that if somebody does get into a bidding war with them, then they can outbid them. So it is also true that with that plethora, that war chest of draft picks, we can outbid them. There's, you know, even if they gave away their entire, you know, draft, right? If they gave away every single one of their picks in the 2020 draft, all rounds 1 through 7, we could still outbid them, right? Because we just flat out have more picks, right? Period. And in fact, we have more high picks, right? So we absolutely do have the capital in that regard. However, the part that he's not really saying in that piece is that they still have enough capital to drive up the price and make the Dolphins pay more than what they should, right? Now, that's a huge problem because, again, if they think that they're going to patch the offensive line together in free agency by blowing through their cap space to sign big name free agent guys that are in the mid or back end of their prime, right? Then subsequently trade away a large fucking sum of their accrued draft capital to move up and get a guy to ensure that they get the quarterback that they want, and also simultaneously outbid the other teams that are vying for that spot, then this just, I mean, that to me, and especially then if they end up taking Tua and then end up playing him because of all these reports about how he's so ahead of schedule and everything is going perfectly and fantastic this and fantastic that, and then they throw him into the fire behind, you know, an offensive line that is not as nearly as adequate as people are hoping or believing, well, then you're just going to spell massive disaster for this team and this franchise going forward, and for, you know, even guys like Tua, whose careers could be you know, completely derailed. I mean, if his career isn't derailed, from the injuries he's had, it very well could get derailed if he ends up going to Miami and the Dolphins continue to make foolish decisions like they have throughout their first year together as a regime, right? From Stephen Ross down to Brian Flores, also including obviously Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, and Reggie McKenzie. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out, but it is a huge topic and a huge storyline that we will be following. Obviously, though, the next major indicator of what, you know, this will be my final word on this for this video, but, you know, the final indicator, or the first, indicator is free agency, right? Because if they go into free agency and they do pluck, you know, Jack Conklin and Brandon Scherf, yes, they are amazing players, but they are getting towards the back end of their careers now, right? They're in their mid to late 20s, and they take a beating there in the trenches. So if they think that they're going to pick up these, you know, these guys, and then it's just going to magically fix the offensive line, my guess is they have another thing coming. But we'll know. If they do that, and then subsequently they don't take, you know, that many offensive linemen in the draft, or maybe if they just wait till later rounds, don't take any early offensive linemen, right? And then trade away, etc. I mean, it's not going to be spelling out good things. But so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. That will be the first indicator. If they don't pick up big guys, maybe they just sign a couple guys, you know, one or two guys that have high upside and, you know, low price tags. That's what they should do in free agency. Then that might suggest then they're also thinking about taking, like, you know, maybe a first round offensive lineman and maybe another one in the second round, right? You know, etc. So, you know, and then it's, my point is that it's going to be very telling on what their strategy is going to be. I mean, I think they've been pretty transparent with it. They've said that they're going to be big spenders in free agency. We know that Stephen Ross wants a quarterback. They did the tenets of tanking, and they have a ton of cap space and draft capital, so they position themselves to be able to outbid anybody. But that doesn't mean that other teams are not capable of, you know, driving the price up and creating a bidding war. They still are capable of that. We're just going to outbid anybody no matter what. But then that could cause the Dolphins to be foolish amid Stephen Ross's craven desperation, and, you know, create further disaster for this franchise. Anyway, so I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.